It was the summer of 1827 in Vienna. Inside a quiet apartment where dust floated through thin beams of sunlight, a group of men stood silently around a desk. The room still carried the presence of the man who had lived there, a man whose music had shaken the entire world. That man was Ludwig van Beethoven. He was gone now. The composer who had written symphonies powerful enough to make emperors pause, the man who had created beauty even after losing his hearing, had died alone. But as his belongings were sorted, something strange surfaced. Hidden deep inside a secret compartment of a wooden desk was a folded letter. The pages were worn, the ink slightly faded, but the words were still there. And what those words revealed would become one of the greatest unsolved love mysteries in music history. The letter began with 3 haunting words: "My immortal beloved." No name, no address, no clue. Just raw emotion pouring from a lonely genius. For nearly 2 centuries, historians have been asking the same question. Who was the woman Beethoven loved so deeply, yet never named? To understand the mystery, one must understand Beethoven himself. Born in 1770 in Bonn, Beethoven grew up surrounded by music, but his childhood wasn't exactly sunshine and rainbows. His father was harsh, strict, sometimes cruel. The kid was pushed hard, forced to practice piano for hours while other children played outside. But that pressure created something extraordinary. By his 20s, Beethoven had already become a rising star in Vienna, the musical capital of Europe. Aristocrats invited him into their mansions, nobles funded his concerts, kings respected his talent. Yet Beethoven himself wasn't exactly what people expected. The man was messy, intense, and honestly, kinda rough around the edges. He spoke bluntly, ignored social rules, and often looked like he hadn't slept in days. Yet when he played the piano, people said it felt like lightning was striking the room. But while his music was growing stronger, something inside him was slowly breaking. In his late 20s, Beethoven began noticing something terrifying. He couldn't hear properly. At first, it was just ringing, then muffled sounds, then silence creeping in. For a composer, losing hearing was basically a nightmare straight out of hell. In 1802, Beethoven wrote a desperate document known today as the Heiligenstadt Testament. In it, he admitted something shocking. He had considered ending his own life. But one thing kept him alive: music, and perhaps love. Now here's where things get seriously mysterious. In July 1812, Beethoven was staying at a spa town called Teplice. He was restless, emotionally wrecked, and deeply in love. Over the course of 2 days, July 6th and July 7th, Beethoven wrote a letter unlike anything else in his life. The words were intense, passionate, almost desperate. Parts of the letter read like this: "My angel, my everything, my very self. My love demands everything, and rightly so. My immortal beloved." It was clear Beethoven wasn't just crushing on someone. This was deep, soul-level love. But the weird part, the letter was never sent. No envelope, no address, no clue. Just raw emotion pouring from a lonely genius. For nearly 2 centuries, historians have been asking the same question. Who was the woman Beethoven loved so deeply, yet never named? Over the years, historians have thrown around a bunch of possible names, but 3 women appear again and again. Each one had a connection with Beethoven. Each one had the opportunity, and each one had secrets. Suspect number 1, Antoine Brentano. The first major suspect is Antoine Brentano. She was intelligent, cultured, and deeply connected to Vienna's high society. Beethoven admired her, respected her, and many historians believe he loved her. There's just one problem. Antoine Brentano was married, which meant any romantic relationship would have been scandalous. But here's the creepy coincidence. Records show that Antoine Brentano was in Prague and nearby regions at the exact same time Beethoven wrote the letter. That timing is suspiciously perfect. Some researchers believe the two met secretly. Others think the love was emotional rather than physical. Either way, the connection is strong enough that many scholars today consider her the top suspect. Still, there's no absolute proof. Then there's Josephine Brunswick. If Antoine was the logical suspect, Josephine was the emotional one. Beethoven had known her for years. They exchanged letters filled with affection. Some historians even believe they were deeply in love. But Josephine's situation was complicated. She was also tied to aristocratic society, and relationships across social classes were a big no-no back then. Marrying Beethoven could cost her everything: status, money, reputation, which meant even if they loved each other, their relationship might have been impossible. Some scholars believe Beethoven's famous Immortal Beloved letter was written after their relationship had already collapsed, a goodbye that never found its destination. The third possibility is Amalia Sebald. She was a singer Beethoven met during a spa trip. Unlike the other women, Amalia had something unique, a warm friendship with Beethoven. They spent time walking together, talking for hours. Some historians believe the connection might have grown into something deeper. But again, there's no smoking gun, just hints. What makes this mystery haunting isn't just the unknown woman, it's the possibility that Beethoven's love was doomed from the start. In early 1800s Europe, social class rules were brutal. Aristocrats married aristocrats. Artists, even famous ones, were considered socially lower. Many of the women Beethoven loved belonged to powerful noble families, which meant one brutal truth. No matter how brilliant he was never considered good enough. That rejection hit Beethoven hard. Friends described him as lonely, moody, sometimes bitter. But when he played music, it was like all that emotion exploded into sound. Some historians believe one of his most beautiful pieces, the Moonlight Sonata, was inspired by romantic heartbreak. His music carried the feelings he couldn't say out loud. And maybe the Immortal Beloved letter was one of those moments when his guard finally dropped. As Beethoven aged, his hearing completely disappeared. Silence surrounded him. He communicated through notebooks. Friends would write questions, he would respond out loud. Imagine composing some of the greatest music ever created without hearing a single note. Yet Beethoven kept working, and in 1824, he unveiled one of the most powerful works in human history, the Symphony No. 9. When the symphony premiered in Vienna, the audience erupted with applause, standing, cheering, losing their minds. But Beethoven couldn't hear any of it. One of the singers had to gently turn him around so he could see the applause. It was a legendary moment. But behind that moment was a lonely truth. The woman he once called my immortal beloved was nowhere to be found. When Beethoven died in 1827, thousands attended his funeral. He was a legend, a genius, a musical titan. But the discovery of that hidden love letter changed how historians saw him forever. Because suddenly, the angry, isolated composer looked different. He wasn't just a musical genius. He was a man who had loved someone so deeply that even 2 centuries later, the mystery still refuses to die. Who was she? A forbidden lover? A married aristocrat? A lost soulmate? Or someone the world never even suspected? The truth is, we still don't know. Today, Beethoven's music still echoes across the world. Concert halls, films, documentaries, everywhere. But hidden behind those powerful symphonies is a quieter story, a story of loneliness, longing, and a love that history somehow lost. The letter still exists, preserved carefully by historians. The pages still whisper the same haunting words written more than 200 years ago. My angel, my all, my very self. And at the bottom, just 3 unforgettable words. Ever thine, ever mine, ever ours. Signed only by one man, Ludwig van Beethoven. But the identity of the woman he loved, the mysterious, immortal beloved. The summer air of Prague in 1812 was thick with rain and restless energy. Horse carriages rattled across the stone streets, gas lamps flickered along narrow alleyways, and somewhere inside a dimly lit room of a quiet inn, Ludwig van Beethoven sat alone at a wooden desk. The man looked exhausted. His hair was wild, his clothes wrinkled, and his face carried the tired expression of someone who had barely slept. But something deeper haunted him that night. Witnesses later recalled Beethoven wandering the streets earlier that evening, pacing like a man caught in a storm inside his own mind. People who knew him understood something important. Whenever Beethoven walked like that, something serious was going on. And that night, yeah, something was definitely up. He had just met someone, a woman, someone who shook him in a way that music rarely did, and for a man who poured every ounce of emotion into his compositions, that meant one thing: he was deep in his feelings. Back in his room, Beethoven grabbed a sheet of paper. The candle beside him burned low. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and slowly, painfully, he began to write. The letter Beethoven wrote that night didn't read like normal correspondence. It sounded more like a confession from a man losing control of his heart. My angel, my all, my very self. The words spilled across the page in uneven handwriting. At times, the sentences were rushed, like he was afraid time might run out. Other moments felt careful, almost fragile. He wrote about longing, about separation, about the agony of not being able to stay together. And then came one of the strangest lines historians still debate today. Though still in bed, my thoughts go out to you, my immortal beloved. The phrase sounded poetic, but it also hinted at something else, something secret. Because Beethoven kept repeating the same painful truth throughout the letter. They couldn't be together yet. Maybe tomorrow, maybe soon, but not now. Why? No one knows. And that uncertainty turned this love letter into something haunting, because it sounded less like a beginning and more like two people trapped in a love they couldn't escape. Some historians believe that just days before writing the letter, Beethoven had secretly met the woman who inspired it. One possible location, a quiet spa town called Karlovy Vary. At the time, wealthy Europeans traveled there for relaxation, healing waters, and social gatherings. It was the perfect place for discreet meetings, especially for aristocrats trying to avoid scandal. Imagine the scene: a peaceful garden, soft music drifting from a distant ballroom, and two figures walking slowly along a stone path. One of them, the intense, brilliant composer. The other, a woman whose identity would puzzle historians for centuries. Some reports say Beethoven looked happier during this trip, less angry, less restless, almost like he had found something he'd been searching for his entire life. But happiness for Beethoven rarely lasted long, because whoever this woman was, their relationship came with serious complications. Europe in the early 1800s wasn't exactly a place where people married purely for love. Marriage was about power, status, money, and family reputation. Most of the women Beethoven loved belonged to powerful noble families, women like Josephine Brunswick and Antonie Brentano. These women lived inside strict social rules. If one of them openly married Beethoven, the consequences could have been brutal. Families might cut them off financially, society could shun them, their children might lose noble status. So even if the love was real, the world around them made it almost impossible. And Beethoven knew it. That's why parts of the letter sound almost desperate. At one point he wrote, "Why this deep sorrow where necessity speaks?" It was the kind of line written by someone who already understood the harsh truth. Love alone wasn't enough, not in their world. After finishing the letter, Beethoven folded the pages carefully, but then something strange happened. He never mailed it. No envelope, no address, no courier. Nothing. The letter simply remained with him. Some historians believe the reason was heartbreaking. Perhaps the woman left suddenly, maybe they argued, maybe reality caught up with them. Or maybe Beethoven realized that sending the letter could destroy her life. So instead, he kept it hidden. A message written from the deepest part of his soul that the intended reader would never see. It stayed folded among his private papers for 15 years, until the day he died. When Beethoven passed away in 1827, people across Vienna gathered for his funeral. More than 20,000 mourners filled the streets. Musicians, students, nobles, common citizens. Everyone knew they had lost a legend. But nobody expected what would be discovered inside his belongings. Among the scattered manuscripts and musical drafts, someone found the letter. The mysterious pages addressed to the immortal beloved. At first, people thought it might be fiction, maybe lyrics, maybe poetry. But when historians studied the handwriting, the paper, and the dates, they realized something mind-blowing. This was real. Beethoven had written it. And suddenly, the world saw the legendary composer in a completely different way. Behind the fierce genius, behind the wild hair and stormy personality, was a man who loved someone with intense, almost painful devotion. Yet somehow, history had forgotten her name. Some researchers believe the truth behind the immortal beloved mystery might be darker than anyone expected. There's a theory whispered among historians. What if Beethoven didn't send the letter because the woman disappeared from his life overnight? Not by choice, but by force. In aristocratic Europe, families sometimes took extreme measures to protect reputation. Secret relationships could be ended quickly, quietly, without explanation. If a noblewoman was caught in a scandalous romance with a composer, her family might send her away, arrange a sudden marriage, or cut all contact immediately. If that happened, Beethoven might have been left with nothing but questions. And that unfinished letter. After 1812, Beethoven's music changed. It grew deeper, more emotional, almost spiritual. Some scholars believe the heartbreak of losing his immortal beloved shaped his later works, especially masterpieces like the Symphony No. 9. The symphony's famous choral ending speaks about unity, joy, and humanity. But hidden beneath that powerful music, some listeners hear something else. A longing, a sadness, the echo of a love story that never found its ending. More than 200 years have passed since Beethoven wrote those pages. Scientists have studied the handwriting, historians have compared travel records, researchers have examined dozens of possible suspects. But the truth? It's still out there, somewhere between history, rumor, and lost memories. The woman who captured Beethoven's heart might never be identified with absolute certainty, but the emotion he felt, that part survived. Because every time one of his symphonies plays, every time a piano begins one of his sonatas, it's almost like Beethoven's voice is still whispering across time. Not to the audience, not to the orchestra, but to one mysterious woman, his immortal beloved.